Welcome to Pest Control Millionaire, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of pest control and talk to industry experts who have turned their passion into profit. Join us as we interview successful entrepreneurs, share valuable insights, and provide you with the strategies and inspiration we need to build your very own multi-million-dollar pest control empire. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is episode number 72, Pest Control Millionaire. I have one of my newer friends, which is super cool. He's a stud. We met online 6 months ago, maybe a little longer. I'm not sure.
Yeah, a little bit. Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook, just, being in the same industry, talking back and forth. And then next thing you know, we were in Florida together.
Yeah, we were in Tampa for energy.
Yeah. And then we hung out for quite a while there. We probably have a really good story to tell. We had an expensive coin flip.
Expensive coin flip there. Good story.
Yeah, we had a good time, and we chatted during the event, and we just talked about watches, and you had a watch, and we'll get into that later on. But I just want to welcome to the show, Zeuss. You're a stud. You work at Newtown Pest Control out of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
He's the COO there. And what I really, really found fascinating, and a lot of people are always wondering and want to know more of this, is you have multiple locations, and you don't live in Pennsylvania. You're the COO that operates out of Florida. So we'll get into that too. So I think it's super cool. So that's what we're talking about through the show. But first, why don't you just tell us like who was Zeus in high school? Like if you and I were a junior in high school, who were you back then?
Well, very different from who I am now. Well, I used to wrestle back in high school.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. So I used to wrestle back in high school. I wasn't particularly any good at it, but I liked it, Something about, getting thrown on the mat was really humbling and kind of put me in the right headspace for the rest of my life, So that was great. That was awesome. But I'm a big dude, And back then I used to wear, like, everybody, even in my wedding video, my friends mentioned it. They're like, remember when he was in high school, he used to wear cat t-shirts? I don't know why. It's just part of my whole wardrobe was just all cat t-shirts. But, high school was a fun time for me. I did a lot of wrestling. I did theater, actually. That's something not a lot of people know about me. I was in a couple musicals and a play. That's actually where I met my wife. She likes to tell the story different than I do because I was too shy to ask for her number, which is true, So she basically forced me, like, give me your number right now. So that was me, shy, kind of quiet kid. Wrestled, did theater. I did a lot of stuff with computer science. That was always really fun to me. So, yeah, a little bit different from what I do now, but it kind of, all those things kind of became building blocks for how I operate things now.
Yeah, cool. And then you also showed up to the podcast today not wearing a cowboy hat. Yeah. And I had to call you out because I don't know that I've ever seen you without wearing a cowboy hat.
When I'm sitting at home, I might not wear it, at home or anything, but when you called it out, I was like, I do feel kind of naked now.
Yeah. You can't be online naked, right? I mean, you can be, but I think that's like OnlyFans or something.
Yeah, I would say this might be a different podcast.
That's awesome. Yeah. So then after high school, you don't get into industry right away. So what did you go do in college?
Yeah. So I went to college for engineering, actually. And that's part of how I got into the industry. So I went to college for engineering, but, like every other college kid, I was broke when I came home from school. And Glenn, the owner of Newtown, he offered me a position. He was like, hey, you want to be a tech, because it's summertime. You always need more tech,
And are you living in Pennsylvania this time? Where are you living?
At this point, yeah, I was living. So I grew up in Pennsylvania. So my family's still in PA. I'm PA raised. So I left for school. I lived in Pennsylvania and I went to school in Missouri. So then I, go back in the summertime. But Glenn offered me a job as a tech. And I almost didn't take it, because like from the outside looking in, it seems to be kind of complicated, kind of scary. It's like, I'm going to be, mixing chemicals, dilution rates, and even then I was very new to driving because I was maybe 18 or 19. And I'm like, now I'm going to drive a company vehicle, it was kind of a scary thing for me, but I'm glad I took that plunge because I really ended up enjoying it a lot. It was a really good time. I got to learn a lot, especially about how the field operates, what it's like to be a tech, And thanks to that experience, and then later on, I came back to the industry. So once I finished school, I had a couple of different jobs, and I realized that engineering just wasn't for me. It was a tough decision for me to make, having spent so much time in engineering school. It was my dream for a long time, and then when I finally got into it, I was like, that's just not for me. So it was a tough call for me to kind of humble myself and say, like, all that work and all that effort, it wasn't for nothing, but that's not the way I want to live right now, you know?
Yeah. How much money do you think you have invested in your college?
How much it would have cost me if I had a scholarship, if I didn't have a scholarship? A lot of money. But I had a full scholarship to go to school. So I paid $0.
Nice. Good work. If you were to put a number on it, what do you think it would have been?
I think it was $40,000 a year. So $160,000.
That's a good savings. So you had just have really good grades. Is that what you got college tuition for? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a tough school to maintain, especially at engineering school, you know. But I came out of high school with pretty good grades. I did a lot of extracurriculars. Like I said, I did computer science, so I had a couple, awards under my belt. So I think that definitely helped too. But yeah, I was very studious when I was growing up. I still am. I like to learn a little bit about everything, so I have books lying around everywhere.
So then what makes you make the transition to, hey, this is not as much fun as I thought it would be? And what brings you back to pest control?
So at that time, I was trying to figure out, I was still kind of trying to figure out my next move. And just by circumstance, I started speaking to Glenn again, and he was actually in need of somebody to help him with the technology portion of the business. The guy who he had before had kind of left in kind of a little bit of a hurry. So he was really in need of somebody to help him out and basically just take over that whole department, Right.
So what I'm gathering there by you saying that is everything might have still been on paper.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would say a good 90% of it was still on paper. So it was kind of paper assisted software, if you want to call it that. So it was note cards, and it was and the scheduling was on the computer. Even as I describe it now, it's making my head hurt.
Yeah. So that's obviously probably one of the first things you change when you go back there is, you're young, you're a software guy, engineering, smart with the computers. First thing you probably do is hey, and a lot of people that are listening, I will actually go through this. You're working with someone maybe a little bit your senior. They've been doing the same thing for the last 20 years and it's worked, right? And having those conversations saying, hey, we really need to move over to this software or new technology. How was that conversation?
It was a little awkward, especially because, so even at this time, I was now living in Florida, right? So Glenn was living in Florida. I was living in Florida. And so we had the conversation hey, come on board, help me with my technology. I was like, absolutely. So I started kind of in a little bit of a hybrid role where it was okay, well, you're going to be a CSR. I'm going to take phone calls so you can learn how everything works. And I need your help with this technology stuff, right? So I'm okay. So just naturally, just being part of a CSR team, you're kind of this just doesn't really work very well, So the idea actually, I pitched Glenn the idea of what do you think of moving to a fully, let's digitalize everything. And that was a pretty big leap of faith for Glenn too, because for him, let's be honest, right? Even from him hiring me to do anything here is a leap of faith, Sure, you got a guy who's smart, him, what have you, but it's this is his livelihood, his business, what he's built up for the past 30 plus years. For him to say, I'm going to bring this young guy on board, and now he's coming up with these crazy ideas, I'm paper. And he's what if we digitalized everything? 6 months into working there, it was a pretty big, leap of faith for Glenn. And then it was a little complicated for me because having been in Florida, the branch is in Pennsylvania. I'm doing all this work over here, so we chose field routes. So, we're implementing with field routes. I'm talking to field routes. And in the meantime, I'm getting feedback from my guys, some of which who have never seen my face. They have no idea what I look like. They don't even know my age, anything about me, So when the time came, we're okay, we're totally on board and we're good. We need to run with it. But now I had to go up to Pennsylvania, fly up there and introduce myself to all these people. And then at the same time, tell them, I'm going to turn your world upside down. So it took a minute to try and kind of get everybody on this moving in the same direction. But we came up with some really awesome training, and we had one of the things that I like to do is get somebody to be as much of an expert as I am on something. That way, if a question pops up or an issue arises, if I'm not available for some reason, somebody there can be the resident expert. Not that I'm I'm usually available, but you never know, where things might take you. I might be in a meeting, I might be somewhere else. So it's good to have another resident expert.
Yeah. Were the technicians younger or older when you first started? Like
a little mix of both. We had a couple of older technicians, some of which had actually been with the company since like the very beginning. So I still get feedback from one of them who's like, "Oh, I liked it better when it was pen and paper."
And I already knew the answer too. And I was just like, the older guys, did they have a struggle getting to learn the new software, taking pictures, updating rodent bait boxes, like all that stuff? And then compared to like the younger guys
really like it. I mean, they're always looking, and it's funny because if you leave them alone with the app for long enough, they'll kind of start teaching you stuff because they're like, "Oh, did you know that you can do this on here?" I'm like, "No," but that's the younger guys. With the older guys, you're like, "Please put your notes in,"
Yeah.
So it's a fun back and forth where you're trying to like, where you get feedback from the young guys and they're like, "Oh, let's do this," and then you tell the old guys and they're like, "Dude, I don't even know how to put a target pest in,"
Right, for sure. So the first thing you basically do is you just go implement field routes. So one of the first things you do, that's strategy number one. You go there, you meet the team, flip the world upside down. What's the second thing you started focusing on, if you remember? Like walk me through the process, like your first maybe 6 months.
Yeah. So the other thing we did immediately was routing. So it's impossible. Like I mean, literally impossible to make a good route when you're calling people on note cards. Because your rate of actually getting somebody to pick up the phone is very poor. Because you're calling them from 9 to 5. They're working their 9 to 5. Chances are most of them aren't going to pick up. So I got my board here and I Mrs. Jones, Mr. Adams, Jonas Olsen here. And I have to get him in there somewhere. I have to get him in the schedule, but he's here, he's there, he's over there. And it's really hard to try and predict who's going to pick up the phone next. So what we did was we would like take a pile and be like, okay, these are all like Newtown.
So you had like map codes,
and just,
right?
Yeah, try to hammer them on,
Yeah, I remember like back in the day having like a map up on the wall.
Yeah.
We'd have like literally drawn with black magic marker of like, this is route 1, route 2, and everyone who called in, we would just put a pin in those routes.
That's the good old ways.
It is. But like, again, like a lot of people are probably listening to this or might still be going through it, or purchasing companies that are older, that are retiring, that they're going to have to deal with this. So like, I want to walk them through the process. I've done it too. So
yeah, I think for us, what really worked so when we didn't have the software yet, what really worked was like hammering down on like putting together, like, this is my Newtown list. This is this town. This is that town. And just absolutely hammering it until you get your route, put together. Even if for me, that might have meant like, let me stay maybe call them a little bit earlier, maybe call them a little bit later. But I think, honestly, like you said, I'm a huge computer guy. I love software. I think the best thing you can do for yourself is get you a software that will help you route. And for us, field routes is awesome. That job pool is just the best. I love the job pool. I love being able to see at a glance who needs to go and where they are.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, routing software obviously changed the industry,
Yeah, it's awesome. And one thing we did was we used to call every single customer, and that just ate up so much time and so
automated calls.
Yeah, so now we just automate everything where we let all of our customers know, hey, by the way, the calls are going to slow down all the way till they stop. But you're going to get emails, you're going to get text messages, like automated messaging to let you know, hey, we're coming out this day. And it's been a hit. People love it because they don't want to spend the time on the phone either. Like they're running around, they got kids, they got a life. The last thing they want to do is like think about like, oh man, when am I going to schedule? And if you just tell them, hey, we're going to come out, we'll be there at this time. Great. It's one less thing I have to schedule now.
Yeah. And then when your technicians are out on the route, are they doing call aheads, text aheads, anything like that, or just a daily call from the office?
Yep. They call ahead, typically 30 minutes. Sometimes customers like to know like an hour ahead of time if they're like real far away, or, they live in the city, but they work over here. So yeah, we do call aheads. And that's really helped to bring down a lot of the incidentals too. Because somebody might have like, oh yeah, that's fine. And then they forgot like, oh dang, I actually can't make that. So one less thing you have to worry about. We'll reschedule them and we'll come out later.
Mm. And so you start as a CSR, you implement the software, and then how long do you work in that position for you move and get a new title?
So it's kind of hard to describe because I kind of, Glenn and I have always worked really closely together, like just in general. So it didn't take me long before I wasn't answering phones anymore. But it did take me a little bit longer after that for me and Glenn to say, like, you're the COO now, you know? So I was kind of just like managing projects, bringing new stuff in, training new people, doing all these things in like a hybrid kind of role. But we hadn't really defined specifically, like, this is going to be your role. This is what it entails. I think it might have taken like maybe a year and a half until that happened. But since then, you know, that's kind of been where I'm at.
Yeah, cool. And then what is your schedule like? Because like I said, for the listeners, like he lives in Florida, their branch, and they have a Florida branch now too. They just started. We talked about that. But then your big branch is in PA. What is your schedule like now going back and forth? How often are you out there?
I'm actually going back. I was just there last week. I'm actually going back there next week on the 14th, 15th, something like that. So right now it's critically important to be up there during
spring rush.
Yeah. So I want to be there to help them. So we're implementing a bunch of new stuff. And I want to make sure that I'm there to help them through it. You know, it can be a little bit difficult when someone's not there to like orchestrate the whole thing. You know, we're starting a new wildlife program. So we've had a wildlife expert, resident expert for a while, but we didn't have like a specific program tailored to him, which we're launching this year. Now, if I just kind of send him off in his own way, be like, hey, you do this now. Okay, this is your thing. He's just an island. You know, nobody else knows what he's doing. Nobody else understands it. He might not have the capability to answer the questions that might come up, you know? So when we do these like big pushes for something, I like to be there hands on. So I'm going to be there for a while. Might be there for a month or two. So it really depends. Once things kind of, I don't want to say settle because they never settle, but once, you know, things kind of settle a little bit, it's kind of a back and forth every month, you know, go for a week, come back, go for a week, come back. But right now it's critically important to be there a good month or two.
Yeah, I agree. And then like when you're at home and you're working from your home office, like, what are the KPIs that you're watching on a daily basis when you're this far away?
Immediately, I like to make sure we're keeping up on our, what do you call it, reservices.
Yeah.
That's a huge one. We don't have too many of them, so it's not something I worry about constantly. My salesmen, I definitely watch my salesmen all the time. They have a good closing ratio. The only thing that they kind of get goofy with is they tend to try and sell like as many big ticket items as they can. And then they like forget like, oh, the recurring revenue is important too, you know? So kind of keeping an eye on like not just that closing ratio, but what exactly they're selling. And it's right in this moment, we're really taking a look at not only what's selling, but what our technicians are seeing. So we're reading really heavily into their notes. So we know, you know, my technician over here went to a house for ants, but he found yellow jackets. It might be time to start marketing to yellow jackets, you know? So we really like to make sure we know what the people want and then give it to them, you know? And you can't do that by just guessing, you know? Especially during COVID, yellow jackets in our area came out at a really weird time. And if we had just followed the structure, they're like, oh, yellow jackets in May to June, you know? If we had followed the structure that we always go by, we would have missed out on a lot of yellow jacket leads. But if we paid attention, since we do pay attention to all their notes and what they're seeing out on the field, we're able to target exactly what's going on and where.
Right on. It brings me back to another question I could think of. When you got back into the company, were they doing mostly one times or was it quarterlies with reoccurring?
We were doing a little bit of quarterlies reoccurring. It was definitely a good amount of one times, you know, definitely a good amount of one times.
Yes, and that's just like, it seems like that's the older generation, right? Was that another shift that you had to convince your boss on? You know,
so I know we both know Seth. Mm-hmm. So Seth has been consulting us for years now. So that was one of the things that Seth kind of helped us to get on board with was the recurring revenue. So it wasn't so much like I had to convince him on it. It was more so like we have to do this together now. But you know, it wasn't a really difficult thing for us to do. It was just kind of a strange way of thinking about it, you know, especially when like I said, these older generation, like you even talk to some of them now, you know, like out in the field and really primarily focused on like, give me the money like now, I need it right now. Not so much thinking about like getting a little bit over time, and I don't know I'm not really sure where that comes from, but I know we do a great job of targeting recurring revenue right now.
Yeah, and I think that's just everything evolves over time. So the industry is evolving, and what they were taught was just what they did for 15, 20 years. So they just don't know what they don't know. And so the industry is evolving, and, the business is evolving, and, there's big players out there that want to buy small companies up. So they're teaching us how to do things the right way and what they're looking for, so I think that's the trend.
It's pretty wild to think, like even in the years that I've been here, how much I've seen the industry change, just everything, the way we do everything, even like the small players and the big players, everybody's doing things so differently from 4 years ago.
Now, give me some advantages and some disadvantages of working remotely.
So one of the big advantages is for me is that I like to kind of compartmentalize my life a little bit. When it's time to work, I'm fully dedicated to my work. When it's time to play, I want to dedicate myself to play, But one of the huge disadvantages is that you don't always get a good reading on what's happening, So you might think that like, oh man, this new program is killer. Everyone loves it. And maybe your guys just don't want to tell you like, I mean, I really don't want to tell Zeus that this program is terrible, So unless you're there, you can get a good feel for it if you have a lot of people who like trust you and like they want to tell you everything. So we have a lot of really great managers up in Pennsylvania, and he's very honest. If I tell him like, hey, I want to do this, he'll be like, no, that's a bad idea. Which just because I'm the COO doesn't mean. I mean, as well as I do, not every idea we have is a good one.
Yep.
And they're the ones that should be responsible for telling us, I don't think it's going to work. Or, maybe they have a great idea too. So I think the disadvantage is really that, not having a great pulse all the time, but that can easily be alleviated by finding and nurturing a really great manager.
Yeah, I agree. And then do you ever notice when you travel there and back and then there again that the culture is shifted or something seems off when you show up? Have you ever felt that?
You know what? Not really. So when I do arrive, it's kind of like I guess in a way the culture does shift, but it's more like let's do our jobs culture while I'm gone, and then when I'm there, everyone's like, man, I'm really happy to do my job, which is something I'm hoping that we can like keep all the time. No, we don't have anyone who's like, man, I really don't like this or anything. So it's just kind of like it's either it's work or it's like really fun, happy work, but they're doing the same thing. I'm not making them do anything different.
Yeah. Do you have like Zoom trainings, like the weeks that you're gone with your guys? So you still keep in contact with them? Yeah,
we keep in contact with them, especially the salespeople. We hold a weekly meeting with them, especially keep them in the loop. Because when you're down there, one of the disadvantages of being like a tech, a salesman is that like you kind of get a little bit of tunnel vision. You can only see what's really in front of you. It's our job as, higher level management to show them, not only see the bigger picture, interpret it, show it to them as well in a way that they'll understand.
Yeah. And I think another advantage or disadvantage here when you look at it is like you get to know the guys on a personal level, but you also get to see the business from the 100-foot view, right? Being so far away, like you're just looking at strictly numbers. There's no emotion involved, like something's off here. And I think, again, that's an advantage and a good advantage. But what's your perspective on that?
It's a little bit difficult, right? Because the human side of me wants to, I guess, give them a pass for certain things, like, oh, well, this guy is doing a bad job because his dog is sick. You know what I mean? And it's like from that point of view where you're with them, you're like, man, I'm sorry. I hate when my dog is sick or I hate when my kids are sick. But then when you see it from the 100-foot view, you're like, this guy's stats are bad, like I need to fix these stats right now. So it's kind of a 50-50 where you almost have to like take away the human aspect just enough that you're not cruel to these people, but understand that if you basically like coddle them, their statistics aren't gonna like improve any. So I think the most important part of that is making sure everybody understands their KPIs. If they understand that like, me calling out this day affects the entire month, if they really need to call out, they'll still call out. It's just human. You don't feel well, you don't feel well. But if it's like, well, like me, I had my concert yesterday, but like, oh, I'm going to call out because of my concert yesterday. No, I'm not, because I know what that affects the company. And I think it's important for them to know as well, to see that big picture.
Yeah. Do you get any pushback from the guys that work underneath you that they don't feel that you're working because you're not there all the time? Or do they just know that you're constantly working?
They come to me a lot with a lot of questions and such. And since we're always developing new projects and always like pushing new stuff out, they kind of see me everywhere, So it's like, oh, hey guys, we're going to push out a new agreement. Okay, well, I know Zeus had something to do with that, like, oh, hey, we're going to go take care of this new project. I know Zeus has something to do with that. So I think they do know, they feel my presence everywhere just because of like, anytime they need my help for something, I always like help them with whatever it might be. I'm always launching new projects. I'm always asking questions, be like, how do you feel about this, And I love to leverage technology to help, just to help them make their lives a lot easier. So I think they feel it in that aspect.
Yeah. Do you guys use like a Slack type thing where you guys are maybe it's text messages just to like in a feed where you guys constantly just talk back and forth? Yeah.
Oh yeah, and that's been awesome for our company culture, especially because we have like different channels where we discuss things.
Us too.
Yeah. So like this is the wildlife channel, this is this channel, and we also have a general channel where people can just talk to each other. And having so many people in so many different places, so a lot of our CSRs are remote. Like our CSR will never meet our technician. This installation tech might never meet that salesman, just because they might all float around the office at different times. But, it's really nice to see like these two staff members who just have no idea like what the other one is like, they're talking about Dune 2, or they're talking about like the creepy popcorn bucket, And I feel like that helps them feel more connected, where it's not just like a faceless entity on my route. It's like, no, that's my boy, that's my friend, I want to make sure I give him a good route, So that's really helped our culture a lot, where they kind of feel like they know each other without having to like be next to each other.
Yeah, that's cool. We have different channels too. And just a few examples, like we have a fitness group, so we're all posting daily pictures, make sure we were holding each other accountable, which is cool. We have like the book of the month club. So we're constantly reading new books and everyone doesn't have to, except for the managers, but we're reading new books every single month. Just, the leaders are readers philosophy, And then we also have like a food one. Like we'll just be posting random food that we've tried throughout the day or throughout our travels or whatever. It's pretty cool because everyone just likes something a little bit different,
I'm going to have to steal that book idea. That's a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one. My managers, they don't like it, but even when they're first hired, I tell them we read a book a month and they have to write a 1-page book report.
Oh, come on. The book report.
Yeah, it's pretty easy, especially with Chat GPT these days. But
yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it's good. It's just the way our culture is. It's the way I've always been. And I love to read. And again, if I don't do it, like how do I expect them to do it? You know what I mean? That's like typically I'm the first one who posts in the fitness app every single day. I posted our picture late today. So 2 guys beat me to it, but it's just, again, I'm not going to make them do something that I'm not going to do. And then, I need to be the leader. So I'm just showing them, hey, like I'm out here doing it too with you. I'm going to switch gears a little bit because you talked about it early on with like the weather and seasonality of our industry. Like every service-based industry has some type of seasonality in anything. But winter obviously slows us down. What do you guys do with the winter to keep your technicians busy? What are you focusing most on winter? Do you lay people off? Talk us through that.
Yeah, so we haven't laid people off in years now. So that's great. It's a good feeling that the first year I was here, we had some guys, because I started working here in January. So we had some guys who were already laid off, and I started to realize that was a more common thing than I thought, amongst the pest control companies. So when that second year came by and we didn't have to lay anyone off, that's kind of a nice pat on the back, it felt good. But we do a really great job of informing our customers of basically the dangers of skipping that winter season, That's when, especially when rodents come out to play, that's really a huge pain point for a lot of customers, rodents. So we focus a lot on exclusions. We focus a lot on anything to do with protecting their home. We have an installation division. So insulation is huge in the wintertime. You know, everybody's thinking about it. So we're able to keep our employees pretty much working all year long. You know, it's kind of, it used to be, you know, like a crazy in the summer and then kind of lull out. And now it's just like steady, crazy steady, you know, we're never not working.
That's awesome. So do they reduce hours or are they still working their 40 hours?
They still work their 40 hours. You know, we might have a couple of days, especially in the winter, because, you know, snowstorms, rainstorms, ice storm. Yeah, you might get something like that, but
for sure. But like you said, you educate your customers on the winter service and the benefits and risks of it too. What do those look like? Is it text, calls, emails? What does that look like?
It's mostly, we mostly bring it down to the people who interact with them most. You know, the technicians do a lot of educating them because, you know, they see them face to face every day. We also interact a lot with them over the phone. So it's even sometimes when we're in the summertime, you know, we'll tell them, be like, this contract is all year round. We're going to come and, you know, it's blazing hot out, but we're telling them like in the wintertime, you know, rodents, and they understand, you know, I think customers really like to be informed rather than, you know, if you kind of just like pretend like, oh, you know, we'll get to that when we get there. You know, it makes them feel like they're being ambushed where it's like, well, I don't see a need to have you out here in the winter. But if we do our job early enough, we educate them early, they feel like I'm getting my value's worth here.
For sure. So like, let's just say in October, you're out there doing their quarterly visit. At that point, they're like, hey, we're going to see our next visit, which is December, and start saying all the benefits and risks at that time.
Exactly. And sometimes, you know, you'll get people who call you because like I said, we automate all our scheduling. They'll call us and be like, hey, I have my appointment, you know, on December 4th, you know, I don't think I really need it. You know, there's no ants, there's no insects. So a lot of our CSRs are also understanding of, I think everybody up and down the ladder understands that the benefits of the winter service and the dangers of lapsing that winter service. So it's not too difficult to kind of inform the customer and keep them engaged.
So if they do still want to skip it, we let them push that service off to the next one?
We actually don't. So we actually tell them like it's actually part of your contract. And we write out on the contracts, this is the month we're going to come see you. So we're like, you know, you signed for this contract, we're going to come see you. And we really explain to them it's really for your benefit. You know, if I skip this service for you, you're not going to have a great time come spring, you know, rodents are going to come into the house, and not even as a fear tactic or anything, but just flat out truth. You know, it's not a great idea to skip that service.
I agree. So with your, let's just say easy number, let's say it's a $200 quarterly. Do you guys include bait stations for the winter service?
We do. Yep, we do. We don't typically use like the Evo bait stations. It depends on like what kind of issue we're having, but right now we're moving into doing a lot more vole work right now with our wildlife specialist. So he's really getting into these like feeder stations, and you know, it's really interesting to kind of hire people who know better than you do. You know, I think that's one of the things that we do really well is we hire a great team because we're not afraid to be humble. You know, I know that there are certain things that I know nothing about, you know, and my wildlife guy knows everything about. You know, so I'm humble enough to understand that that's not my department. You know, if he tells me, you know, this is what I think, I value that opinion greatly. I don't take offense to it. We're like, oh, well, we used to do the Evos for that, you know, and I kind of just get stuck in my own ways. That's really important. That's a word of advice.
I agree. What are some big wins that you've had, you know, since becoming COO, and maybe some losses too that, you know, that you went through that would be very telling to the listeners? We can always learn from someone's mistakes too, you know?
Oh man,
I've made some big ones myself.
Yeah, I think our biggest win, right off the top of my head, was, and it makes me feel good because, you know, this during the time that I was here, we were on Inc. 5000.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we made the list. This was just last year. So we made the list. I think we were like 1523, something like that.
Nice. You had a big year.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great time. And, you know, I was doing the numbers for like next year, you know, because we want to keep applying, you know, keep winning. And we did better than when we originally won. So, we're going to keep climbing or keep staying on the list,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, it's great. Some losses. I mean, I make so many mistakes. It's hard to pin down just one. I think the funniest mistake I ever did was I deleted an entire day's routes. So that was pretty bad.
While they were working, or?
It was for the next day.
Okay.
So that wasn't great either, because, all these customers knew we were coming out, and it was bad. I was looking for new ways to improve our routing, our smart routing. And I deleted every route from the next day. It was 4:00 the day before. So it was a huge panic.
That happens. Let's go back to the Inc. 5000 thing. So to be 1,500, you had a very fast growth year, from one year to the next. Talk us through that. What happened in that year that exploded growth? What were you doing with strategies?
So a lot of our strategy and a lot of our growth and strategy came from really targeting that recurring revenue. We have a great crew. So every customer, I'm going to say every, we're not perfect, but a lot of the customers we get, we keep, and that kind of, it just snowballs on itself and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So by the time, next summer comes, we have a huge base of customers and we just kind of keep adding on and on and on. So that's been really great for us.
So were you converting those one-time customers, maybe calling those up and get them on their quarterly service? Is that where the growth came from? So you already had this huge list, right, of leads that were current customers. You could triple your business or double your business by adding a couple of visits,
Oh, absolutely. And we still do that now, some customers, you just, no matter what you try, they're just nope, I just want a one-time service. And we still target those people. That list is constantly expanding. But I think a lot of our success came from a lot of the new services that we offer as well.
So upselling into your current company and your current client list.
Yep. So we upsell them into all these different services that we have. And one of the big things that really drove growth is that we don't do anything without having a recurring plan. So we do installation work. And if you call me for installation work, tomorrow, you got to have my recurring plan as well.
Yes. Like bait stations.
Yep. So you have to have a recurring plan with us to get any of the other added benefits, which we do quite a few. Exclusion, we do insulation. We do a lot of services that if they want, and most of the time they love it, because they get the added benefit. There's a reason why they're calling us about exclusion. So if you tell them, okay, I'll do your exclusion, but you need to have my recurring pest control plan, they're happy about it. They love it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And a lot of people still do a lot of one times. And they still have that list, and they're going to chase new customers still, and they're paying this crazy acquisition cost for a new customer when they're not even working on the current list that they have, where they could just double the company inside over a summer.
Easily, yeah.
Again, a lot of those one times, even if you turn them into a biannual, you're still going to double the revenue. Now you do three triannual, now 3 times revenue. And if you do quarterly, now you're 4 times revenue where you were last year with the same customer base. It's so important to upsell those current customers.
Yeah. There's no easier place. There's no lower hanging fruit than those customers that you did a one-time service for.
For sure. Outside of that, though, what do you guys mainly focus on for marketing, and which tactic strategies you guys use around that?
So we're actually, this year kind of a fun year because we still do digital marketing, Google ads and pay-per-click, just like everybody else. But Glenn and I were sitting down and thinking, what happened to the old school way of doing things, the pen and paper, the door hangers, the postcard in the mail. So we're launching an effort this year to do a lot more in mail invitations. We're going to do a lot more community involvement days. So we're going to be involved in parades. We're going to be involved in
I love that.
Just all the old fashioned ways, to do it, because I think it's a little bit more personal, when I see an ad online, am I inclined to purchase it? Yeah. But would I be more inclined if I got a postcard in the mail, maybe a fun magnet, I think I'd be a little bit more inclined to do so.
Yeah. We just went to a trade show. Again, super old school marketing, 20 grand in revenue in 2.5 days.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So just look for those too,
Yeah. I think everybody kind of shifts in one direction. We all move in one direction, be like, oh, Google ads.
Well, because it's easy, right?
It's the easiest way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like, again, like when we first started out in business, like we were doing all this stuff, all the offline marketing because we didn't have the money to go spend online. Then we get to our business to size and we forget all the old marketing tactics that got us where we're at today and focus on just online ads because it's easier. So I see it all the time. For your technicians and sales guys, what do you guys do to keep those guys happy and retain technicians?
One of the easiest things you can do is just listen. Just find out what's going on. What are they thinking about? What drives them? You know what I mean? So we have a lot of really great technicians, and a lot of them just have really basic wants and needs, where like we have one guy who's like, man, I really like, backpack sprayers. I think I just like them better than a power sprayer. You get that guy a flow zone. That's exactly what he wanted. He'll never leave, just listening to them and kind of finding out what drives them is super huge. And the funny thing about that is that if you take care of them, they'll start to take care of each other as well. While I was up there, our salesman came to me and they're like, hey, can we do something for the techs? They're always doing our stops. They're doing our stuff. Can we buy them lunch? Can we buy them, food? So we had like a big party that the salesman threw. I didn't have any involvement in it. They were like, hey, can we do this for them? So if you take care of them, they'll start to take care of each other, because they see that like, okay, well, Zeus cares about the techs, lead by example in that way.
I love that. Do you guys still use a lot of power sprayers or mostly backpack? Where are you guys at in your fleet?
No, we're still in the power sprayer. We're still power spraying. Anywhere we can use a backpack, we will. It's obviously cuts down on the time of reeling in that hose, taking everything out. But some of these properties in Pennsylvania are massive, just absolutely gigantic. And there's just no choice but to use a power sprayer,
Yeah. And again, I kind of miss those old days for sure. I love the power sprayers. They're a lot of fun. We optimize the vans and trucks and, it's just in our market, it's just easier to get away from them,
Yeah. I mean, if I could, I would absolutely love to just give everybody a flow zone and call it a day.
Yeah. Are you much of a reader? You like to read?
I do. Yeah.
What has been some of your top books that you would recommend to the listeners?
So I'm kind of an oddball because when I was in high school, I took a course called Honors Philosophy, and that was a great course. So I find myself reading all sorts of really like strange books. You go from like Plato's The Republic, where like, okay, that's a pretty normal philosophy book. And then there's books that are like, they call them thought experiments. The pig that wants to be eaten.
I've actually heard of that, but I've never read it.
It's a fantastic book. It's one of my favorites because one of my favorite things to do is just to think, and these thought experiments are a lot of fun because they kind of force you into this state of having to think about something outside of your comfort zone or outside of what you typically think about, like you and me, we think about, our techs, our routes, our sales, our marketing, our this or that. And for me, it's beneficial to think outside, just completely outside the box, Will it help me directly to know like what my answer is about the pig that wants to be eaten? Maybe not, but it's flexing that muscle of my brain that I don't typically use anywhere else. And when I'm very interested in like the study of muscles and the body. And one of the things that like I've learned is when people get older, there's muscles in like the back of our legs that we don't use. And that's what prevents us from getting back up when we fall when we're older. So, but in your normal day-to-day life, you never use those muscles, And so there's a lot of doctors nowadays who are recommending like do these exercises to strengthen these so you can get back up when you're old, right? And it makes me think I take the same approach when it comes to my reading and my philosophies, where like I said, these thought experiments, they might not help me directly right now, but they'll put me in a state of mind where I'm not typically in. And if I have to be later, I'm prepared for it.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'm going to read a question off my phone from one of the listeners.
Okay.
His name is Brandon, and he said, how can I differentiate myself from my competitors in my market? What would you say to that?
I think one of the best things you can do is kind of find out what exactly your competitors are doing first. You gotta know what they're doing before you can say, I want to be different. And if you're in a market that's saturated by like your Orkins and your Terminexes, that won't be very difficult. One thing we do, and it's been part of our culture forever, is doing one nice thing for the customer. So we always try to do one nice thing.
Give a few examples of what they could do. I love that. Hold on a second. I love that.
So we always try to do one nice thing, because it really, even if they don't go with our service today, they'll remember you because you did this for them. One of the things I still go out and service houses sometimes just because I don't want to lose that experience of it, So I'll go out to a customer's house and he'll tell me, I had a, orchid out here and they just showed up, sprayed and left, So I was like, okay. So next time I went out there, I saw that his newspaper was on the curb and his trash cans were out there. Let me bring these trash cans inside. Hey, by the way, I brought your newspaper in. How are you doing? How's your dog? Remembering things about them makes this service feel more personal and more like you really care about them.
Yeah, I love that. And if you can get the information of the dog's name and keep it in the customer notes, it's money.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One customer we have, he has a German Shepherd rescue and he speaks German to all his dogs. So I was on Duolingo learning a little German and he was like, his dog's name was Bruno. I said, Bruno's learning some new tricks. And he was like speaking in German to Bruno. So I looked at him, I said, Bruno ist sehr klug, which means Bruno is very smart. And he was just like, I love that, like that's so nice. It took maybe 5 minutes to learn, that little bit of German.
Yeah, that's cool. Before I ask the last question of the day, because we're running out of time already, we didn't even get to our story. So I'll tell a story before we get off here, I suppose. Because we said at the beginning that we would. What would you say is your superpower? Like everyone has like a superpower.
My superpower, I wouldn't even know, I think my superpower is probably just listening to people, taking in what they have to say and making something great out of it. I really just like to listen. You know what I mean? I have a bit of I don't want to say a gift, but I like taking ideas in from people and then like upgrading them to the next level. I don't have a ton of ideas on my own, but if you give me like the loosest scrap of an idea, I'll help you turn it into something really great.
You're the implementer.
Yeah. Which is, why I'm the COO. So
exactly. I love that. What piece of advice would you give to some of the listeners that's been very instrumental into your career?
Be humble. Be very, very humble. That's the number one thing. Everybody has something to teach you. Everybody. From the tech to, to the highest person in your industry, everybody has something to teach you. So when we went to the conference in Tampa, Energy, I feel like everybody's like, let me learn from Paul. We absolutely learn from Paul, absolutely learn from Seth, but realize that there's a lot of people around you who know things that you don't know right now. You're all in this room and you're all, successful. Why? Why is he successful? And I'm also successful. He could learn from you and you could learn from him. And if you're humble enough to accept that, like, my company's not perfect, there is things we could do better, you're always going to keep improving.
Great advice. Like I said, you can say that over and over and over again. And it's so true, just having everyone in the same room like that, right? And that's why they put the event together. It's not so much what you learn at the conference, it's what you learn outside and in between the halls, that where you really learn a lot.
Yeah. And, this came out of it, you and I having this conversation. So I think the wealth of knowledge keeps getting spread over and over again. It could have just ended there, but you and I decided, let's do a podcast together. And now hopefully we'll benefit a lot more people than just you and I who were there.
Absolutely. And we got to trade swag too.
Yeah.
Well, before I ask the last question, I guess I'll let you tell the story of what happened. Well, I'll start it out and saying I walked up, a couple of my friends were all together talking, and you guys were both wearing Rolexes.
That was Brightling.
Brightling. And the other guy was wearing a Rolex though.
Yeah.
And he was wearing a Rolex, you were wearing a Brightling, and I was like, hey, like, I've actually been looking at a brightling watch for a while now. Like, I see there's a brightling store. Like, we should go there together, and then I'll let you take it over from there.
Yeah, so it was fun. It was really funny. We kind of loosely made a plan. We're like, oh, we should go. And then like at the end of the conference, like, do you want to go? Like, do you really want to go? Yeah, let's go. So we climbed into my truck. We're headed to this mall. We're looking around for the Breitling store, and they had your watch that you originally wanted, right?
Yeah, there's the athletic one, the blue one that matched like the company colors.
They had this really nice blue athletic Breitling, and it was maybe what, like $3?
Yeah, like $2,800 maybe.
Yeah, $2,800, and that's the one. But then I have it's called the Super Ocean, right? And the guy being a good salesman was like, oh, what about this one? And he showed you the most baller Super Ocean. It was nice. It's black, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were having a hard time deciding, like, should I get the blue one for the company colors? Should I get this one because it's pimp? Going back and forth until I think either me or Shane might have been like, flip a coin for it. Why not? The guy goes to the back. It's a coin for it. Heads, it's the expensive one. Tails, it's the $3,000 one. All right. Flip it. Boom. Heads. Oh, I guess I'm leaving with the pimp watch. Everybody was talking about it. We're like, that's the luckiest coin ever. This guy just made commission off a coin.
Yeah, he better keep that nickel.
I told him, I said, you gotta hold on to that forever. Like, and as soon as people start like, what should I get? Whip out the nickel.
Yeah, and I'm usually so good at filming everything. And that's the one time that I wasn't
the one time we
straight.
I think the tensions were just so high, It was like
a $4,000 coin flip.
Yeah, no kidding. That was the most expensive coin flip I think ever.
Yeah, but it was fun. Like, we had a good time. It was a good experience. Like, I love the watch. It's super cool.
You see the watch and you think of me, right?
I do. For sure. Let me, we'll end the podcast because we're rolling over an hour here, but what are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? I'm most proud of Newtown, honestly. I think Newtown is one of the best things I've ever been a part of. I'm very happy that I'm a part of Newtown. I'm happy that I have the trust of my guys, more than anything. I'm happy that I've been able to still be the person that I am despite the success that we've had, I think it would be really easy to let it go to your head and be like, I got a pimp watch, I got a pimp truck, I think anyone knows, who knows me is like, he's just a nice guy, I don't try to show anything off. I try to be as humble as possible. And I think I'm very proud of that. We've had a lot of success and we're still on the road to a lot more success. And I don't think I'm going to change.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And if you weren't a good dude, you wouldn't be on the podcast. So we connected right away. Zeus, you're an awesome dude. I look forward to our friendship. Again, thanks taking the time to spend with us today. It's really, really cool.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk soon.
All right. Take care now.
See ya. Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode of Pest Control Millionaire. We don't charge any money for the show, but obviously the show is not free. You can pay for the podcast by sharing it with your friends, share it with your family and your coworkers, like and subscribe, and give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. These things just make a huge difference for us. If you have any specific questions you want answered about business or life by me or any of my guests, send it to info@pestcontrolmillionaire.com. And you can get in touch about personal business coaching at pestcontrolmillionaire.com as well. And if you guys would like to join our Facebook page and get in there, we have a lot of entrepreneurs in there that like to talk shop. So see you guys in there. And again, thanks for listening to the show.